This is in the locker room. This is before the game ended. Before the game ended. She comes out in the locker room and posts this. Like, what are we doing?
Sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, is anybody on this team going to stand up for Caitlin Clark? JC Sheldon grabbing Caitlin Clark all game, clawing at her. It's like, tonight was a brawl, folks. Tonight was a brawl. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, is anybody on this team going to stand up for... And Sophie Cunningham.
Sophie Cunningham wasn't hired to be a bodyguard, but that's exactly what she became. After watching her teammate Caitlin Clark get assaulted on the court with a flagrant cheap shot, something inside her snapped. She went from teammate to enforcer in the blink of an eye, and the WNBA was not ready for the consequences. This is the story of how one player's raw, unapologetic loyalty created a new era of justice in the league. A brand of justice enforced not by referees, but by pure, cold-blooded intimidation.
And let's start with the play that set off the entire night. So as you guys can see here, JC Sheldon is guarding Caitlin Clark. She swipes her in the eyeball. Caitlin Clark nudges her off because JC stays in her face. And then Tina Charles runs over and is kind of wagging her finger in Caitlin Clark's face. And then Marina Mabrey comes out of nowhere and chucks her to the floor. Now let's watch this in slow motion. Here, JC Sheldon is guarding Caitlin, swipes her in the face. There's one. Going for the ball, swipes her in the eyeball. Caitlin's gonna have to start wearing goggles. And then Caitlin pushes her off of her, like, why are you still in my face? Marina Mabrey, bat out of hell, chucks Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark didn't just walk into the WNBA. She arrived with a target on her back so massive it probably needed its own zip code and a dedicated security detail. From the moment she was drafted, she wasn't just another highly touted rookie. She was a cultural phenomenon, the designated savior of the league, the cash cow expected to lift viewership and relevance to unprecedented heights.
Welcome to WNBA Fight Night, or as some people are saying, WNBA Raw. What a game that was. We had it all. We had basketball, we had fighting, we had blonde on blonde crime. Oh, such an epic. Oh, goodness. But at the end of the day, it resulted in an Indiana Fever W. 88-71, taking care of business.
And with that immense fame came a dark and dangerous reality. Every opponent in the league wanted a piece of her. This wasn't just about playing tough defense. It was about sending a message from veteran players who felt their years of hard work had been overlooked to hungry young guns wanting to make a name for themselves. Everyone saw Clark as a benchmark.
Let's start here. This is, of course, Sophie and Sheldon going down the floor. Sophie tries to wrap her up, and Sheldon gets to the floor, and all hell breaks loose. And Sophie said, I'm not having it. We'll go. So there's that. That, of course, was all a byproduct of this right here, folks. And I mean, when I tell you social media is setting the WNBA on fire right now, not in a good way, that's the understatement.
The physicality was relentless from her very first game. It was a constant, draining stream of off-ball bumps, hard screens, aggressive shoves, and trash talk, all meticulously designed to test her composure, to rattle her mentally, and to physically prove she didn't belong in their league just yet. The whispers around the WNBA were clear and consistent. Go after the rookie. Don't let her get comfortable. Make her earn every single point.
Of course, Marina Mabrey is going to get ejected because that was unwarranted. She literally came out of nowhere and chucked Caitlin Clark. There should be a flagrant one, of course, on JC Sheldon because she swiped her and hit her in the eyeball. Whether it is intentional or not, you can still have a flagrant a flagrant foul called on you, whether you are trying to intentionally hurt somebody or not. But this is what they called, you guys. This is what they called. Caitlin Clark, Marina Mabrey, Tina Charles were assessed with technical fouls on Tuesday. Caitlin, Marina, and Tina Charles. Technical fouls. That's it. Technical fouls. That's it. And JC Sheldon was assessed with a flagrant 1 foul, and no players were ejected.
But there's a razor-thin line between a competitive welcome to the league moment and a coordinated campaign of outright aggression. As the season wore on, it became clear that for many teams, this line was becoming increasingly blurred. In a nationally televised game against the notoriously tough Connecticut Sun, that simmering tension was destined to explode, setting the stage for a conflict that would redefine the meaning of team protection.
I feel good, and Sophie Cunningham put me out on a high note, folks. I didn't even say, Ben, calm down, regroup. I didn't even say that. Let's get straight to the play. Everybody, the plays everybody is talking about. First off, Marina Mabrey body checking Caitlin Clark to the ground. JC Sheldon all over her. Riding her. Pokes Caitlin Clark in the eye. Oh, man. Caitlin Clark needs to start wearing goggles, folks. Caitlin Clark's going to need to start wearing goggles. Bumps up on Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark says, "Get your hands off me." And then here comes Marina Mabrey. Boom! Exploding Caitlin Clark like a safety coming downhill in the NFL. There was no flop there.
The moment itself felt both shockingly sudden and grimly inevitable, a perfect storm of frustration and aggression. It began with Connecticut's JJ Sheldon guarding Clark with her signature tight, pestering defense. But then came the swipe, not at the ball, but a clear, deliberate rake across Clark's face that sent her reeling back. Visibly frustrated, Clark gave a slight nudge to create space, a standard reaction from any player trying to get an opponent out of their personal bubble. In a normal game, that would have been the end of it. But what happened next escalated the situation from a physical play to a flagrant assault. From out of nowhere, Marina Mabrey, a player who wasn't even involved in the initial sequence, charged in like a heat-seeking missile with a personal vendetta.
Early, about a minute and a half into recording this reaction earlier, with 1 minute left, and all hell broke loose between JC Sheldon and Sophie Cunningham, and it is very clear the Indiana Fever, some of these girls on this team are finally fed up. Once again, WNBA, we're not talking about your basketball. We're talking about the WNBA, WWE Raw circus that you got going on right now. And we all know this incident with Sophie stems from the incident that was clearly not handled correctly by the WNBA and the referees.
There was no attempt to play the ball. There was absolutely no basketball reason for her actions. She lowered her shoulders, squared up, and chucked Caitlin Clark to the ground with startling force. It was a cheap shot, plain and simple. A blatant, disrespectful, and dangerous act that had nothing to do with competition and everything to do with intimidation. The whistle blew. A belated screech in an arena suddenly thick with tension. The crowd gasped. Commentators were left momentarily speechless, and the damage was done. On the Indiana Fever bench, a collective anger began to swell, but for one player in particular, a fuse had just been irrevocably lit. This wasn't just a hard foul anymore. It was a declaration of disrespect that would demand an answer.
All right, enough is enough. You know, at some point, the line gets crossed too often where something needs to be done and things need to be corrected. And that is certainly the case with the way things around Caitlin Clark are officiated. This is a constant problem now. You know, it is something that since the beginning, I've kind of like backed off on because physical play is a part of sports. You know, going after a superstar and trying to rough them up a little bit to get in their head is a part of sports. But when it crosses the line, the referees need to do their job.
As Caitlin Clark hit the hardwood, something inside Sophie Cunningham seemed to snap. You could almost see the shift in her eyes, a change from competitive focus to cold, hard fury. This was no longer just a game. Her teammate, the undeniable engine of their team, and the heavily scrutinized future of the entire league had just been blindsided in front of her. While others on the bench and on the court looked on in a mixture of shock and anger, Cunningham's expression hardened into a mask of chilling resolve. In that single, potent instant, her job description unofficially changed. She was no longer just a forward for the Indiana Fever. She was now Caitlin Clark's personal security, a self-appointed guardian angel with a taste for vengeance.
Hello, Earth to Kathy Engelberg. Are you going to step in and do something about this trash that's going on? Players are getting assaulted on the floor. Like, come on, bro. Caitlin Clark could have really got injured right there, y'all. She could have really got injured by these haters, these jealous, hating players. They just jealous and hating, bro. She didn't even get ejected.
It was a silent, intense transformation, a promise made without uttering a single word that this DMN disrespect would not stand. This was a line that could not be uncrossed. The league, the referees, and especially the opponents didn't know it yet, but Sophie Cunningham had just clocked in for a brand new role, Enforcer. Her shift had just begun, and her first order of business was going to be making sure everyone in the arena and anyone watching at home understood the new terms and conditions of engaging with her star player. Peace was no longer an option. Retribution was now on the agenda.
Caitlin Clark, please leave this league and let it crumble. Please, this league does not deserve you. All this hate from these black people, all this hate from these lesbians, these people in the media, just go play basketball somewhere else. Your fans will follow you. We will follow you wherever you go. But let this shit crumble and burn to the fucking ground, man. Let the viewership drop below 50%. Let them lose hundreds of millions of dollars again, man. Let them go back into fucking irrelevancy. Nobody giving a damn about none of these players. Just leave.
Sophie wasn't the type of player to file a formal complaint or wait for a post-game review from the league office. She believed in a much more direct, immediate, and physical form of communication. She bided her time, letting her anger simmer until the perfect opportunity presented itself. And it did. Later in the game, the target came into view. JJ Sheldon, the player who had initiated the whole ugly sequence with the swipe to Clark's face. As the two went down the floor, Cunningham made her move. It was a chaotic tangle of limbs, a physical confrontation that quickly spilled over into an all-out scuffle. But there was nothing random about it. Sophie's message was brutally and unmistakably clear.
Nah. Enough's enough, bruh. Enough is enough, bruh. What is going on? WNBA, y'all need to get this under control. This is ridiculous. Marina Mabry, you just put yourself in the Dejanay Carrington box. You dirty slime ball player, you come and blindside Caitlin Clark. Marina Mabry assaulted and tried to fight Caitlin Clark today. This is ridiculous. WNBA, Kathy Engelberg, do something. Do y'all want to go back to 55 to 60% of the people not watching shit again? I normally don't cuss in my vlogs, but forget that.
Players from both teams rushed in. Her body language screamed, "I'm not having it. We can go right here, right now." She was delivering the receipt for the earlier shot on Clark, a direct and calculated act of retaliation. This was a message sent not just to Sheldon, but to the entire Connecticut Sun team and to every other team in the league that might be watching. The old way of doing things, where their rookie could be treated like a punching bag without consequence, was officially over. From this point forward, any and all aggression toward Caitlin Clark would be met with an immediate, personal, and painful response from her. A new precedent was being set, not by the referees, but by the sheer force of one player's will.
So much happened in this game, but first, let's talk about Sophie and JC. All right, JC Sheldon. My goodness, dog. My goodness. Now, honestly, I felt like Sophie might have wanted a piece of JC after the Caitlin Clark and JC kind of scuffle going on, right? Then this happened, okay?
What made the situation even more volatile, and frankly, what justified Cunningham's actions in the eyes of many, was the league's baffling and inadequate response to the initial incident. After Mabry's blatant and dangerous shove, fans, players, and analysts alike expected a swift and severe penalty. An immediate ejection seemed obvious. A suspension felt not only warranted, but necessary to maintain control. Instead, the official ruling landed like a wet firecracker. A complete abdication of responsibility. Caitlin Clark, Marina Mabry, and Tina Charles were all assessed with simple technical fouls. That was it. Mabry, the clear aggressor who came flying out of nowhere to level a player, was allowed to remain in the game.
We see Caitlin Clark on the receiving end of something, and it's not called correctly. In fact, she gets a technical foul after getting poked in the eye and then shoved to the floor, and Marina Mabry doesn't even get thrown out of the game. It's basically open season on Caitlin Clark, and the special whistle that she supposedly gets goes in the other direction. Flagrantly so. They got to put it to an end. I mean, she's the most valuable player in the league in the most literal sense. And somehow she gets the opposite of superstar treatment.
JJ Sheldon eventually received a flagrant 1 foul, but the shocking lack of a more serious consequence sent a horrifying message to the rest of the WNBA. It was effectively open season on Caitlin Clark, and the league's officials weren't going to do a DMN thing to stop it. This weak, almost cowardly response from the referees did more than just anger fans. It forced the Indiana Fever's hand. If the league and its officials refused to protect their biggest star and most valuable asset, then her teammates would have to do it themselves. The league's failure to enforce its own rules created a power vacuum, and Sophie Cunningham was more than willing to step in and fill it with her own brand of justice. From that moment on, Sophie's entire presence on the court transformed. This was no longer just about playing basketball, it had evolved into a tense game of psychological warfare. She became a walking deterrent, a human shield whose eyes were constantly scanning the court for threats. The Sophie stare became a tactical weapon in itself, an intense, soul-piercing gaze that she would lock onto any opponent who got even a little too physical with Clark during a dead ball or after a whistle. Her body language became a constant, simmering warning. She'd plant herself directly between Clark and an aggressive defender, not to set a screen, but to draw a clear, uncrossable line in the sand. She was communicating a powerful message without ever having to say a word, establishing a new, unspoken rule for the entire league. Touch her and you deal with me directly. It was a primal, fiercely protective instinct on full display, and it was terrifyingly effective. Opponents who once felt bold enough to take cheap shots or deliver an extra shove now had to hesitate. They had to look over their shoulder because Sophie was always watching, waiting. The fear of her immediate retaliation became a more effective deterrent than any potential fine or foul call from the referees ever could be. This new dynamic introduced a hidden, unspoken cost for every team that would face the Fever for the rest of the season: the Sophie tax. Suddenly, opposing coaches' game plans got a lot more complicated. Any coach who scribbled "get physical with Clark" on their whiteboard now had to add a crucial, unspoken follow-up, miss, and be fully prepared to deal with the consequences from Cunningham. A hard foul was no longer just a hard foul, it was a direct invitation for a one-on-one confrontation with a player who had already proven she was more than willing to escalate things to a breaking point. It forced a split-second calculation in the minds of every opposing player. Is a single cheap shot on the rookie really worth spending the rest of the game looking over your shoulder? Is it worth being on the receiving end of a legally questionable screen, or an intense, in-your-face confrontation that could get you ejected, or worse, make you look foolish on national television? Sophie effectively became a human toll booth on the path to Caitlin Clark. She weaponized her own loyalty, forcing every opponent to think twice before acting on their aggressive impulses. In doing so, she single-handedly raised the price of admission for anyone wanting to play dirty against the league's biggest star. And as the season progressed, it became clear that it was a price many teams and players were no longer willing to pay. In the end, what happened on that charged and volatile night against the Sun was so much more than just a fight in a single game. It was the public coronation of the WNBA's new unofficial sheriff. It was the moment one player's fierce, raw, and unapologetic loyalty completely rewrote the unwritten rules of engagement for an entire professional league. Sophie Cunningham didn't wait for permission from the coaches. She certainly didn't care about the optics or the potential for fines. She saw her teammate being systemically targeted. She saw the league and its officials fail to act, and she took the law into her own hands. She became the bouncer, the bodyguard, and the enforcer, all rolled into one formidable package. A constant, intimidating presence ensuring that Caitlin Clark was protected at all costs. The message sent that night was loud, physical, and crystal clear. The days of taking free shots at the league's brightest star are over, and as the dust continues to settle, one question now hangs over every arena in the WNBA: who will be brave or foolish enough to test that line again?